Hi. This video is intended as a quick instruction for the procedure for adjusting a basic boost control setup. Before you do any adjusting of the boost control settings in the tune, presuming all that stuff is turned off, and I'll show you that in a second, you want to make sure that your boost control hardware is all functional and in good condition, because it's the wastegate mechanism itself that controls your boost, and then all we do in the ECU is we sort of adjust it up so that it will regulate boost at a higher setting, but it's the wastegate actuator, diaphragm, and spring that does the actual control of your boost, and all of that stuff needs to work correctly, not bind, and give you reliable boost control. So what you want to do, and we'll look at the boost control stuff here. We'll start with settings. Single solenoid injector out I is the stock wastegate solenoid output on the ecuGN. So we select that, 26 hertz or 19.5. Both of those work. These solenoids, you want them to run at a pretty low frequency. At a higher frequency, they don't operate fast enough, so you won't get good control. So 26 or 19 both work. Output polarity of normal, i.e. a higher duty cycle will give you more boost. That's how these work. A range of 10 to 90% is the effective range. You can really set those to 0 and 100 if you want, because the duty cycle is going to follow the table. So, and if you don't want boost until your engine warms up, or if you don't want your boost to increase over your wastegate setting until your engine warms up, you can set that in the coolant threshold. And we're going to do open loop. 90% of people, open loop is what you want. And like I said, the boost control hardware is what is actually controlling your boost, the wastegate and such. So that's a closed loop system in and of itself, and should be stable and reliable. And before you do any of this nonsense, so make sure the boost control works, controls your boost to some normal level, and then we'll increase it from there. The stock hardware normally will give you around 12 to 13 pounds of boost in and of itself, and then the solenoids just increase that set point. So you would want to have this off and go test all your boost hardware, make note of what your base boost is, make sure it's repeatable and reliable and functional. And once all that stuff is working well, then we'll come in and do this. And then we'll, like I said, turn this on. And sometimes in these settings, you either need to click a different setting or hit enter for the change to be taken by the ECU. Burn makes it permanent in the ECU. A lot of these settings are temporary until you click burn, but that, well, that's just the way it works. So then enable it like this. That enables the system to give you boost control, or to allow you to tune your boost. And then we open the duty cycle table. We set the 0 row to 0 so that the solenoid doesn't buzz at idle. This is your throttle percent, and this is your RPM. You can tune the table to give you more or less boost, or more or less duty cycle anyway, versus RPM, but most of the time, and for most people, that's not necessary. So the first step was to validate our boost hardware and know how much boost it gave us. Then we enable this, and we start at 20%. Is where I usually start. We'll highlight the whole table, and we'll type in 20 and hit enter, and then go and make a careful pull and see if your boost went up a little bit. should go up a little bit. It might not at 20%. And make note, write it down, because this information will be useful later. Depending on what it did, then we'll go up to 30 or 40, and try it again, and make note of the boost change and the duty cycle that did it, and on up. The stock solenoid arrangements didn't adjust boost much until you got 60 to 70%. So depending on your solenoid arrangement, that may happen, and it's not unusual. But let's just say 70% was what gave us the boost we wanted. So we'll put 70% everywhere, and we'll make some test hits, and we'll try it over a couple of days and make sure it's consistent, and then we can forget about it. One thing to note, some settings or some setups, you get a lot of part throttle flutter, surge or whatever, and that's because the turbo is spooling up really well, and you're preventing the spool up, or you're holding lower boost by backing out of the throttle, and it puts the turbo into surge. You can eliminate a lot of that by reducing the solenoid at low throttle angles. So you can, for instance, we'll go 0 there, and well, let's say we'll go nothing below 70%. So you'll get 0 to your whatever your base boost is at most of your throttle angles, and then when you want more boost, you have to bury the throttle. That'll actually give you pretty good foot controllable boost levels, and helps reduce the part throttle surge. And you can experiment with that, but that's about all the system can really do as far as surging and stuff. But this sort of adjustment, it may take you a day or so for your foot to learn the new progression, but it actually is quite effective, and is a good way to tune this stuff. So that's all there is to open loop tuning. It's just this one table, and you adjust it so you get the boost you want, and just leave it alone. The duty cycle to pressure or boost pressure information is helpful if you ever want to do closed loop boost, because the system will start with this setting. Let's say you have 13 or 19 psi is what your target is, and it was 70% to get it there. That information gets put into the closed loop stuff as a starting point, and then it'll adjust up and down from there. It's a lot more involved to tune it, and it's not necessary for most installations, because the wastegate diaphragm and spring arrangement, that mechanical equipment, is what regulates your boost, and it doesn't need any software or controller interaction to operate. So this is what 90% of the users will be using. Works really well. Anyway, so that's all there is to that. Any questions? You guys have my email and whatnot. Hopefully this video came out okay and isn't too rambling and wordy, but I wanted to put in a lot of information in a relatively short video. We're up to 9 minutes or so, so it's longer than I intended, but hopefully it was straightforward. Again, test and verify that your boost hardware works, then enable the solenoid and bring the duty cycle up a step at a time until you get to the boost you want, keeping track of the information because it'll be useful later perhaps. And then once you're there, you can adjust the throttle table like this if you want, if it's helpful, and you're done. That's it. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to try and publish this. Hopefully it came out, and hopefully the audio is pretty good and I didn't sound too rambly. Have a nice day.